So just a few other thoughts about push models and the pull model. Where is the push model most appropriate? Where is the pull model most appropriate? Also, how about dealing with our supposedly impossible projects? We've all been there, had to deal with projects where we're given really impossible constraints. And I think the main problem we'll see in Agile is giving upper management, senior management, some type of forecast where we expect to finish up on the project, budget-wise and schedule-wise, which they always want. So when we're starting out with a project, we're always given some difficult constraints. Yes, we never have all the money that we would like to do, or we're never assigned really all the resources or the right resources that we would like to have for the project. We're never given enough time to do the project. So what's the best mode to proceed with? Do we do it the PMBOK way, the push model? Do we try to define everything in detail up front? Well, I think just some quick thoughts on that. Yes, you do that when you're working in a fixed price contract scenario. You can't afford any type of budget overruns. If there's a budget overrun, that's on you. So therefore, you do need to get everything planned out in detail up front to know exactly what your costs are going to be so you can control them in the fixed price world. You really have some mandatory constraints you have to live with. There's other types of projects where you have to get it right the first time. The devil is in the details. There is no wiggle room, or the cost of making changes downstream are going to be very, very high. Also, if we cannot put together this dedicated team, 7, 8 individuals that are cross-trained or cross-functional teams and co-located, if we're pulling together teams of people, hundreds of people, or people geographically spread out and they're working part-time on the project, they're working on many other things too, then Agile is probably not a great fit there as I see it. We're going to really need, again, to go with more of the prescriptive model. So in any of these scenarios, then do go with our very full-blown, fine-grained project management plan and all the level of formality that's described in the PMBOK guide. So as we've seen, Agile methodology is going to be a much better approach when the requirements up front are unknown or undefined, or we know they're going to change in a significant way. There's going to be a lot of volatility. The customer doesn't really know what they want. So do things in an iterative fashion, prototype, and kind of feel out what the customer really needs, what's working, what's not going to work. Identify fast failures, as Doug DeCarlo says. So very early on in the game, before we've invested a lot of time into things, hopefully we'll see the features that don't matter, and we won't build around those features and add on to them and waste a lot of time on that. We won't waste a lot of time trying to plan the unknown, plan what's completely uncertain. That's non-productive. Oftentimes, in this type of environment, we're really trying to address very competitive marketplaces. Creativity is at a premium, and the Agile approach for dealing with teams is going to be much, much better. We need to empower these people. We need to provide them a lot of freedom and a lot of trust and let them solve the problem. And in that type of environment where we need very high energy, high efficient teams, the Agile model is really going to work much better. Again, let them discover and explore the requirements as we go through these iterations. So just to build off the previous point, sometimes at the beginning of our projects, we're not just given what seem to be very difficult constraints. Sometimes we're flat out given almost impossible constraints, and we're really not sure how to deal with this. Upper management, senior management, the sponsor, they are very skilled. They are very adept at putting a lot of pressure on us up front in the beginning of the project. We've just gotten the charter signed. We've just documented at a very high level the business case, why we're doing this project, what the initial high level product requirements are, functional requirements are, and we just got this down at a very high level, and yet they're going to ask us things like, okay, now you can get this project done in the next 9 months, yes? And they want an answer. or you can get this done for under $450,000. You understand that's a necessity, right? And oftentimes our inclination is to say, of course, yes, the team and I, we will work diligently as hard as we can and we will achieve these goals. Well, we shouldn't say that. We've really got two different answers. So again, old school PMBOK guide, traditional project management, the answer given that way would be, I don't know yet what it's going to take. It's going to take me another month, perhaps even longer, to plan out the project in a lot more detail. And of course, this is going to entail planning out scope in a lot more detail, developing a scope statement, a WBS, then taking that and developing a schedule, and then of course getting that baselined, and then going into budgeting and cost estimating and getting a cost baseline. And then we'll come back in another month or two and we'll tell you what we can get done, in what time frame, at what cost. So that would be the best answer in the PMI model. But really there's another approach that Agile gives us for dealing with this. If we say, I don't know yet, but why don't we do, if we do a first couple of sprints, then we'll achieve perhaps 20% of the core functionality, and maybe, again, following along with what we just said before, maybe we'll meet 80% of your needs with 20% of this core functionality. Maybe you will realize that a lot of these other things you're originally thinking out front were needed are not really necessary at all, and then the whole project becomes much more practical. And if that's not working either, then there's several other advantages of going with an iterative prototyping approach. Because if I can do a sprint and achieve 20% of the functionality, then I'm getting a much better handle. I'm getting a much better projection of how long it's going to take to do the remaining 80%. So I can forecast off that. I'm going to know much better what we can get done and where we can get it done at what cost. As we've seen from our earned value slides, in Agile we don't really have a way to predict where we're going to end up on budget and where we're going to end up on schedule. We know what we're going to do in the first sprint. We know each iteration, each sprint is time boxed to between 2 weeks and 4 weeks. We know the numbers of people that are working on each sprint, and so therefore we can probably get a very accurate prediction of our cost for each sprint. But things are unknown. If requirements are going to change, volatile and unknown up front, then we really don't know how many sprints it's going to take to get to where we want to be at the end. So therefore we don't know that final budgeted completion or really even the final end date. So that's really the tough problem for Agile, I believe. And even though we might have pretty understanding senior managers and sponsors, they're very adept at pinning us down on those type of things, and they're going to want some type of commitment, some type of end date for this project and some type of cap on the budget. So this gets difficult, and this gets into advanced planning in many of the books on Agile project management, where they talk about the need to do more involved release planning up front. And this is really where they start then getting into kind of more of a mix, a hybrid model of incorporating some of the detailed planning types of steps that have been traditionally part of the PMBOK guide with their Agile models, and again try to approach things in this kind of hybrid situation. So here's my contact information, and I'd love to hear back from you, your thoughts on this topic. Whether you're a Scrum Master or you're practicing Agile in your current projects, or you're a PMP and you're much more aligned with the traditional method and you think Agile folds very nicely into the current PMBOK model, love to hear your thoughts, whether you agree with what I said or whether you don't. Always trying to learn new things and kind of move the envelope forward a little bit more. So also I've attached here the URL, a link on my website to a longer, more in-depth article on this topic.